Good evening. Welcome to the 41st episode of Rachel Pilcher Writing Workshops Facebook Live. I am Rachel Pilcher. Thank you for joining me tonight. We are going to discuss this evening the NaNo Prep, creating complex characters. But before we get started on that, I just have a few announcements, actually just one announcement really, to talk about. Is coming up this Saturday and Sunday, so 5-6 days from now, on October the 12th and the 13th. I'll be teaching 2 sessions at Writers in the Field in Mansfield, Texas. So I just checked, registration is still open, and on my notes it says for under $100. It is for under $100. It is for $85 for both days. You'll have 2 days of hands-on, interactive, fun, gaining some knowledge, and as well as getting some writing information. So come out and join me, Writers in the Field. My 2 sessions, the first one is an insider's guide to publishing, and the second session is the daily rituals for beginning writers. So if you've taken one of my Write Fearlessly courses, some of the information that's going to be in those daily rituals will be fairly familiar to you. So I hope that you will join me for Writers in the Field next weekend. For more information, you can go to rachelpilcherwritingworkshops.com and click under Rachel in Person. And it's also listed, if you go to my events page here on Facebook, that you'll find it on the Rachel Pilcher Writing Workshops page. I'm getting all kinds of alerts on my phone right now because we are under a severe thunderstorm warning. I am kind of excited about that, but I hope it doesn't happen while I'm live because all of this wonderful lighting, it'll go dark. So this will be very, very dark. But I am so glad. We've needed so much rain and we have had none. So if you've had too much rain, I am sorry. We want a lot. We need all of it. So go ahead and get started for the evening. So during the month of October, we're going to be doing prep for NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month, for those of you who aren't familiar with it. Last week, we did a session on getting your ideas down and trying to figure out exactly what it is you might want to write. And I'm basing this series off of the NaNo Prep 101 guide that you can find on nanowrimo.org. And for those of you who don't know NaNoWriMo, NaNoWrimo.org. You can sign up, go to their website. It's all free. They have a resources page. It's wonderful information that you can get in there. And it'll help you to tackle those 50,000 words that the challenge is for November. You don't really win anything except for just the knowledge that you've done it. But a lot of people say, well, I won Nano. Well, last year I did. And it's I think I said 1667. So 1,667 words a day, that'll get you 50,000 words. That'll get you a first draft. So hopefully we can get you going. So most people say that doing this planning is cheating for NaNoWriMo, but I kind of feel like if you don't plan, then you're kind of doomed and destined to fail on this because I've done both ways. I've not planned and I have not made 50,000 words, and I've planned and I was able to go back to my notes, see what I needed to do, figure out, okay, well, I can't quite work on this scene right now, but there's this other scene that I had in mind, I can go and do that. So I think that doing as much planning as you possibly can ahead of time will help you have a better organized first draft when you get to the end of it. And like I said, you'll get that 50,000 words. So let's go ahead and start talking about this second week's plan. So creating complex characters. This is from session 2 in creating complex believable characters from the NaNo 101 prep. That's pages 9 through 18 if you already have the workbook and you're looking at it. Let me make sure that mine keeps falling asleep on my iPad, so we'll make sure that I am following along with what my notes actually say too. one of the things that you're going to need to do is there's a huge belief that if you have well-developed characters, it's actually significantly more important than having a really good plot. You can have a great plot for something, but if your characters sound stiff and they sound like they're not really saying words that people would say in real life, then your characters are going to be flat, they're going to be uninteresting, and your story is still going to be boring, even if you have the most amazing story out there. There's a example in the workbook about the difference between flat and better developed characters. So I'll read that really quickly for you. So a flat character. Steve was a good kid. He got good grades, and he was never late to class. So a better developed character. Steve Goodhold was a good kid. He got good grades and was never late to class. Little did everyone know that he spent his nights working as an internet hacker for a modern mafioso who he met through his older cousin Peter. So, that's just the first paragraph. They have a whole nother paragraph on developing who that character is. So it's going into more detail. It's figuring out who your characters are, what their background story is that you'll want to do. Every story also will need to include the 3 types of characters. Now, you may have heard about types of characters when you were in school, and those types of characters need to be included in your story. If you don't create those characters, they're not going to be there. So you need to have a protagonist. The protagonist is the star of the show. They're the ones that the story is going to be about, and it could be more than one protagonist. But generally, sometimes if you have a trio that works, you want to go for kind of odd numbers. I guess it's more feng shui. I'm not sure, but odd numbers tend to work. You'll want to also have very strong supporting characters. Now, the supporting characters, they have a very important role in the protagonist's life, but they're not the star of the show. That's kind of like whenever you're watching a TV show, you have, the other characters. They're not the star of the show, but they help move the story along for the protagonist as well. And they play an important part. They help that character think about what they're doing and move along through the narrative of the story. So you'll want to make sure that you have those supporting characters. And then the last one is the antagonist. Now, the antagonist can either be a physical or an abstract villain. A physical villain is someone that actually exists. It's a real person. Not a real person, but it is a person. And the abstract villain could be, like if you've seen the movie Twister, the abstract villain is the tornadoes. But there was also a physical villain in that story as well. That you were not rooting for. You did not want that other guy to win. You did not want the Dread Pirate Roberts to win. That's who it was. So you want to make sure that your character does have someone that they're gonna have to work against to get what they need done for your story. So the NaNo Prep 101 handbook does have a great section of questionnaires on what you need to add, what you need to know about your characters and the story of who you need to have. So you need to think about in this questionnaire. You'll want to think about what's your character's favorite color, because sometimes that can say something about the character. What do they like to wear? What's their favorite item of clothing? Let's see, what are some of the other ones? How old are they? What race are they? And you can do this even if you are doing a fantasy, sci-fi, supernatural story, and your main character is not necessarily human. But that means you're going to have to kind of build that world ahead of time so you know who these characters are. Maybe they have a strange or unique physical attribute. Maybe they have, something that they hope to grow out of by the end of the story. Maybe they have pet peeves, or they have a fond memory of something. And this is going way into the psychological background of who your characters are, but being able to develop your character in that much detail will help you have a fuller character that is not flat. So we don't want flat. No flat Stanleys here. We need to have, fully formed characters. So, even for, let me see if there's, they even have favorite books. What would your character read if they were to read books? The supporting characters, you'll want to write down information about how they know the protagonist. How do they feel about the protagonist? Are they, how are they different than the protagonist? What makes them unique, but, someone that the protagonist would want to be around? That's a good one. That's not even in there. Why does the protagonist like them? That could be useful. It's not even on that list. Add that to the list. Just write it in if you're doing it. And then the section 3 that they have is talking about the attributes of the antagonist. So, what is it that's dislikable about that character? Are there any likable traits? Because you're going to have, and this is with any story, your antagonist will have to have some sort of sympathetic point to them where you almost feel like, I can identify with this person. They're not 100% pure evil. And they're probably not even like evil. They're just somebody that's against your protagonist. So they don't have to be, like the devil, or they don't have to be the tornado, or they don't have to be, somebody that's just terrible. They just have to be someone that is not moving in the best interest of your protagonist. So, what are their weaknesses? If it's an abstract protagonist, what is it that makes them stronger, that will at some point defeat the protagonist briefly to be able to turn back around? Is it poverty? Is it weather? I know I keep going back to weather. I think I might be influenced by the weather here. I'm not sure. But, what is it that they do? So it's a lot. And, I just kind of zoomed through. I'm on page 17 already. So I've zoomed through 8 pages just flipping through and talking to you about it. But, there's a lot involved in building complex characters. And if it's more than just they had this hair color, they were this race, they had this eye color, and they were this tall, then that's gonna be not as interesting as building more personality, building more physical attributes, building more social personality in there as well. So just make sure that whenever you're planning this out, you put some of that in there. That way, whenever you're getting your 50,000 words, you can add that in on your character, and you don't have to go back and, you may have to edit some of it out because, it could be that you get way too detailed. You start talking about moles in places we don't need to know about. I don't know. But you can do all sorts of things with that, with developing your characters. So one of the last things that they want you to really pay attention to is the 3 big character questions. So in those 3 big character questions, it could be, the first one is, what does the main character want? What do they need to grow? And so that's kind of a want versus need kind of a thing. I want to have this, but I really need to have this. And what are their major flaws and obstacles that are in their way? So, and I definitely think that you should write characters that have flaws, because that makes them seem more realistic. That makes them seem, and even if they're not human, that makes them seem more human. And as you will have human readers reading your story, it will be something that your human readers can relate. This is if you're writing sci-fi, fantasy, supernatural. But they can relate to what it is that you are trying to convey through your characters. So make sure you do that. And, if you're not 100% sure who your characters are at this time, and if they end up changing while you're writing, that's fine. That happens. It's the writing process. They don't have to be exactly who you think they're going to be, and you may be in the middle of writing something and you start writing this big, bad, awesome paragraph about, well, the character did this and it was because, their parents died whenever they were 3, and you're like, wait a second, I didn't know their parents died until I wrote it. That's okay. That's okay. That's called being creative. That's writing. You're doing a great job. So, just deal with those as they go, and you can adjust as you are writing. So next week, we are going to move on to a discussion of constructing detailed plots or outlines. So as for those of you that are pantsers, this is going to really freak you out, I can tell you. But, it helps to have an outline. Doesn't mean you have to know exactly what's going to happen on page 48. No, that's not what outlines are. I think that's why pantsers kind of get a little freaked out about it. If you missed last week's discussion, though, you can go back, episode 40 on developing ideas. Go back and check it out. And if you find the videos on the Rachel Pilcher Writing Workshops Facebook page, you can also, if you didn't know, I have a YouTube channel. You can go to Rachel Pilcher Writing Workshops in YouTube, and I have all 40 of my episodes, and pretty soon 41 of my episodes downloaded to YouTube. So if you found this information helpful tonight, thank you so much for joining me. Click on the like button right over to the side there, and then feel free to share this video with anyone who you think could benefit from my words of advice. Thank you again, like I said, for joining me. I look forward to visiting with you next Sunday right here on the Rachel Pilcher Writing Workshops page for another writerly discussion. Have a good evening. Stay dry.